So we want to talk about a couple of stories related to Meta and AI. And the first one is about Meta investing in Scale AI. So Meta has taken a bold step in the arms race, acquiring a massive 49% stake in Scale AI at a stunning valuation of nearly $30 billion. As part of the deal, Scale's 28-year-old founder and CEO, Alexander Wang, is joining Meta's new superintelligence division, reporting directly to Mark Zuckerberg. And Scale AI will continue operating independently with its chief strategy officer stepping in as interim CEO and shareholders receiving a huge payout. And this deal has caused shockwaves. Google has dropped Scale AI as a vendor, and rivals like Handshake and Turing are rushing to fill the vacuum. And for Meta, this is a strategic power play, right? Part of a $68 billion AI investment push in 2025, aiming at catching up with OpenAI and Google in the generative AI space. Now, if you don't know what Scale AI does, just very quickly, this company has come out of nowhere. It's been created by a couple of relatively young people here. Its job is to basically help companies that are creating models to solve their data problem by generating synthetic data, lookalike data, variations on their data, to basically take, let's say, X amount of data and turn it into X times 10 so that you can train your models on fractions of real world data that has been extrapolated by Scale AI's systems. So it's really a methodology for training, tuning, and scaling up generative models. And they were an independent arms provider, tools provider to many players in the space. And Meta has said, thank you very much. We'll buy 49% of that and take a key strategic position in the ecosystem.
Well, here's the interesting thing, Chris, and this is an analysis I've heard on other podcasts, but I strongly agree with it, which is why did Facebook buy 49% of this company? Exactly 49%, right? And what is actually happening here is this is a backdoor acquisition. It's an acquisition in all but name because Facebook cannot acquire this company because that would create a huge amount of regulatory scrutiny and it probably wouldn't pass. So what they've done is they've said, we're going to buy 49% of the company at an absurd valuation, such that the amount of money paid for that 49% is probably equal to the full value of the company. We're going to take the CEO, and thank you, he now works for Facebook, thank you very much. And the rest of the company, well, we don't really care, right? And of course, the first thing you see is Google, which is actually Scale AI's number one biggest customer, saying, well, we don't really like the idea of having such a strong dependency on a company that is now effectively controlled by one of our biggest competitors. So for Scale AI as a company, this is a terrible deal, right? Because, they just have cut off most of their customer base. But that's not what this is about. This is about Facebook, Meta, spending up big to take a strategic position to effectively buy up this technology, take it out of the hands of its competitors. And importantly, we talked about OpenAI's massive acqui-hire of Johnny Ive just a couple of weeks ago. And in a sense, there's a whole lot of tech that comes here, but also this is an acqui-hire of the top talent in the space. It shows a level of boldness and arguably also a level of desperation from Meta, who seem to be maybe just falling away a little bit from the absolute frontier of what is happening in AI these days.
I think this is really, really interesting because we've seen this happen a couple of times before in the AI era, especially, of these major hyperscalers in acquiring, in all but name, these smaller companies and basically strip mining them. I want to bring this back to my meta trend that I've mentioned a few times on the show, this idea of unbundling. We're sort of unbundling the concept of acquisition from corporate takeover. So the corporate entity, the institution that is known as Scale AI is not being acquired, but its assets, its core value is being acquired, is being ripped out of the heart of it. And it's this kind of Machiavellian, or not even Machiavellian, it's this kind of like underhanded way to get around the regulations and the law. And we're sort of unbundling the incentives of the corporate structure of the company from the incentives of the shareholders within that company. And this is a really like nasty way of getting around the kind of the regulations, the rules, the checks and balances in the country. And I don't know how long this is going to be allowed to continue. And if it weren't for a completely potato governance structure in the US that is captured by money and corrupted by cults of personality, one would imagine that they would pass laws to cover off for this kind of stuff. I will point out, for all of my criticisms sometimes, my loving criticisms of Australia, it doesn't allow this kind of shit to happen, or it doesn't allow it to happen for very long. Instead of passing laws that say something like, in a divorce, any money in your name shall be put into community property and then divided out, it just says stuff like, whatever you have functional control over is yours, and we will evaluate you based on that. And so I imagine if Australia doesn't have this already, it would do something in this case of something like, you know, anything that approximates an acquisition, whether it is technically an acquisition or not, counts as an acquisition, and you may not do such a thing unless you are, subject to these acquisition laws. But the US doesn't do this kind of shit. They build in loopholes and carve outs so that the lawyers can have a field day and the people can do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah, we'll see how this plays out. But yes, I don't think this is really unbundling, Chris. It is, as you say, it's just a loophole that clever lawyers have found, and hopefully will be closed soon. But in the meantime, that's what's happening. But maybe it's a good way to come to the second part of this story, which is these stories coming out of multiple places, including from Sam Altman himself, saying that Meta has been trying to poach top AI researchers from other labs, including OpenAI, for eye-watering amounts of money. According to these reports, Mark Zuckerberg has been contacting these top folks themselves and making cash offers as high as, wait for this, $100 million, right? So these are the sorts of offers that we used to top pro footballers and basketballers getting. This is now what the top AI researchers in the world are able to command from places like Meta in their strong effort to catch up. And the crazy thing is, apparently, all of these people who have been getting these crazy offers have turned them down. I think that's just even more exceptional to say that there is so much money that these researchers can basically choose where they want to work based on where the best work is happening. And there is no amount of money that can really prize them away, because a place like OpenAI can easily pay them a similar amount. So I don't think we have ever seen employees who are not star sports people paid anywhere near this much, probably in history. This is more than investment bankers. This is more than top traders make. It's just an incredible time. And again, points to the stakes here, and points again to this fact that Meta is spending up big, but is no longer really at the front of this race.
So it's interesting, I'm not sure that the reason these people are staying is because OpenAI can match these offers, or that these people are getting anywhere near the equivalent amount of money. Apparently, Sam Altman is saying that none of his best people have left, and attributing it to OpenAI's mission and culture, not financial competition. So at least publicly, or at least reportedly, the question here is not, wow, OpenAI, these people can command so much money and OpenAI is able to match it or willing to match it. What the story is here is that people want to work for Sam Altman and OpenAI $100 million more, or $80 million more than they want to work for Mark Zuckerberg and Meta when it comes to AI. Assuming they paid something like $20 million in total comp. I don't know how much of that is true. Is there some quiet side deal, some deal that hasn't been reported? Is there more to the story behind the scenes? I don't know. But if it's true that these guys are turning $100 million offers down to keep working at OpenAI because we like OpenAI, that is one hell of a culture, a mission, employee fit, et cetera, one that everyone would be extremely envious of.
Yeah, I don't buy it. I think they're at least getting paid in the same realm. So if Facebook offers them 100 million, maybe they're getting 70 million at OpenAI. But the truth is, money talks, and there are very few people in the world, they do exist, of course. There are very few people in the world who do not have their price, right? At which they would say, you know what? I like working at OpenAI. It has a great culture, but those people are offering me $100 million. There are very few people. And it does remind me, when Facebook was a young whippersnapper and I was working at Google, there was a period where Facebook was aggressively recruiting top software engineers from Google. And we're not talking about the same quantums of money here. We're in the hundreds of thousands, the hundreds of millions. But what happened is they were very aggressively going after Google's engineers. This is pre-IPO. They're saying, hey, come work at Facebook, you'll make a mozza. And Google started basically inoculating itself. Basically, they had an unofficial policy that if you got an offer from Facebook, they would do a counter offer that was double.
Yes.
So you could basically go to Facebook, get your job offer, come back to your manager at Google and say, here's my offer from Facebook, and you would just get your salary doubled. And so, when things really heat up for top talent and there is a lot of money, then these companies start doing crazy things. And although the volumes of the numbers are bigger than they've ever been before, these are also companies that have raised amounts of capital that have never been seen before. So it's not surprising that in a very limited field of top AI researchers and top AI engineers, they're like, all right, we just raised $50 billion. Yes, we're going to put $1 billion of that towards making sure that our top people stay here. That seems like a rational decision in that context.
This reminds me of an email that Steve Jobs once sent. I think it was to Adobe, saying something like, we have a standing policy with our recruiters that we don't recruit from Adobe. It seems you have a different policy. One of us must change our policy. Please let me know who. Steve. And it was an email from Steve Jobs, basically saying, "Hey, you guys better stop poaching our people, or we're going to start poaching yours."
And that was the smoking gun in a class action lawsuit against Apple and a number of other Silicon Valley companies for basically collusion and
Hmm.
using that to suppress salaries. So, yep, it's a really nifty email, but don't do it at home, kids. Like, it's not a good idea. Collusion is bad.
Exactly. But I think this is related to the previous topic as well, though, Yanev, right? Which is Meta can't buy OpenAI. They can't get those assets. They can't, make the investors and company whole. And they have to try to dismantle OpenAI one employee at a time, or at least get some of its best assets. And so it's not a direct correlation. It's not as aggressive as buying 49% and all this sort of stuff. But it is this sort of like trying to find some way through the window, through the roof, through the chimney to try to get
Mm.
access to these incredibly valuable resources that are very rare in the world.
And, I would say if you are a young, talented, technical person, this is a very rare historic opportunity to massively upskill yourself to a skill set that for at least the next few years is exceptionally lucrative, exceptionally in demand. So, never been a better time, right? Like, as a young software engineer, as a young computer science researcher, to look and see that there are people earning $100 million for their skills, it's kind of crazy. You could say it's sick, but you could also say it's sort of inspiring. Like, why should it be the bankers who earn the big bucks? Why shouldn't it be the incredibly talented researchers who are bringing the frontiers of technology forward? It's a rare time in history, and I think folks should take advantage of that. Those are our thoughts on Meta and AI. What do you think? Join us in the comments to let us know, how desperate do you think these guys are? Do you think they can catch up? And what would you do for $100 million?